Right.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Adoption Happy Hour, the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where our goal is to educate and elevate, center adoptee voices, and also hear the experience of the members of the adoption constellation. So, really excited to have you here tonight. My name is Greg Gentry. I'm a domestic infant adoptee from the baby scoop era, and I'll be your host. And excited to introduce in just a few minutes here our guest, Merika Goolsby. Before we do that, Jen, I was wondering if we have any housekeeping activities or any announcements.
Yes, we do.
Great.
Start off with got all of our upcoming programs. So not only do we have happy hour, but we also have in order of their next time. We have First Families hosted by Amy Seek. That will be this Thursday, the 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That is a writing program, and it is also open to anybody that's in the first family. Following that, we have Putting Yourself Together After Reunion with Dr. Joyce McGuire Pavo. That will be on the 16th. That's a Tuesday. That's at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Once again, that's open to adoptees, biological family members, NPEs, donor conceived people. It's open to everyone. And then the next happy hour, which I will be showing you a slide for that in a moment, is on the 19th. That is the one that's hosted by Patricia Knightmeyer. That one's at 7 p.m. And then we wrap up June with Migrating Towards Wholeness with Dr. Liz. That is at 7 p.m. And our next happy hour, and the registrations are open. I'll drop the link in so you can register for any of our programs. But it's an interview with BK Jackson and readings from relative strangers. She's got a group of really excellent people that are going to be participating in that. So we hope you can make that one as well.
That's exciting. Great. Thank you for that. And let's just take a look real quick at our disclaimer here, just so we can talk about some of our rules in the space here. So again, we are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents. Please remain on mute and raise your hand on screen or the virtual hand to be recognized. And that will apply during the Q&A session after the recorded portion here on Zoom. You may post your comments or questions in the chat, and we do encourage that. If you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thoughts, please contact a licensed professional, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, by dialing 988. A reminder, this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential, and portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest. Let me tell you a little bit about Merika Goolsby. She is a San Francisco, California native. I'm also a California native, Merika. She's a former foster youth and proud adoptee. With over 13 years of experience as a small pet care business owner, she combines her love for animals with her passion for psychology, holding a BA in psychology from San Francisco State University and an MA in counseling psychology from Argosy University. Merika has also served as the facilitator for an online support group for same-race Black adoptees, and she also has built an amazing systems-involved community on TikTok, where she live streams daily to discuss all things foster care and adoption. This has created a safe space for connection and dialogue within the community. This is exciting news here. Marika's memoir, A Flower Called Orphan Girl, was published in April and recounts her journey through foster care and adoption, confronting child abuse and trauma while transforming from survivor to thriver. She is committed to empowering others on their personal journeys. Marika currently facilitates the Get Fit Diamond Club, an online fitness community that provides a judgment-free, supportive environment for individuals to achieve their fitness goals. Through her work, she aims to inspire others to prioritize their well-being and embrace the importance of mental and physical health. And I'm just very happy to have you here, Marika. Welcome to the Adoption Happy Hour.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Yeah, and it's always exciting when people in the community come out with new books, when they're introducing their memoir or perspectives they've had from their lived experience. And of course, we value those so highly. And it's great to see so many of them that have come up in the community in recent years. And we'll be spending some time tonight speaking about yours as well. But I wondered if you had a few words of introduction to yourself as an adoptee, maybe a little bit about your story of how you became an adoptee or anything you know about the relinquishment that happened for you.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I do know a little bit about my story just by piecing little bits of information together from my adoptive mom, my birth mom, the little bit that I got to read from my foster care file. Um, so what I've pieced together is that um, my birth mother could have parented me and my two older siblings if she had gotten some education and support. We did not need to be permanently removed from her. My birth mother was 25 when I was born. She was a college student. She was living in public housing. She was working a part-time job and maintaining, a household with two kids and a baby on the way, which was me. I believe all she really needed to parent was a parenting class, therapy to manage her past trauma, and free or low cost daycare. So her issue at the time was that, she was going to class, she was going to work, and it was not always easy to get a babysitter. And for whatever reason in her mind, a 5-year-old boy was the man of the house. And a 5-year-old boy should not be changing diapers, making bottles, and taking care of everything while she went to work. So to me, that's just an error in thinking. And her neighbor, instead of offering to help, just called and made CPS reports kind of back to back, like the kids are alone again, the kids are alone again. And then we were removed. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the system. And between birth and the age of 3, I believe I was in 5 different placements and just kind of bounced around. And my final placement was when I was 3 years old. And that ended up becoming my adoptive home. The adoption wasn't finalized until I was 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So knowing what I know now, I think they could have not adopted me and just let me age out. Because what I found out later as an 18-year-old starting college was there were a lot of things I would have qualified for as far as help with housing, help with tuition, free counseling, if I had aged out that I'd missed out on because I was adopted at 12. And I was just kind of like, what?
Wow. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And by introduction here, and of course, it sets the whole conversation in motion and the whole course of life events for you.
Mhm.
And it's really sad to realize that resources and help, availability of help and assistance for your mother would have allowed her, hopefully, to have parented and some
Yeah,
guidance too. You mentioned that she could have benefited from.
yeah.
It's really sad to know that families get broken up when these things happen. And of course,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, the intervention from CPS and being called in, and we know it's not a small thing when rights are terminated, for example. It takes a lot to get to that point, and it's very sad that it happens. But
Yeah.
um, to think of you going to 5 different placements in so short of a time, do you have any recollection of any of them other than the final one?
I think I vaguely remember the one right before the final one.
Okay.
Um, all the other placements I only have read about. I know the first, so what a lot of people don't realize is I was born with no sound.
Oh,
And that was kind of part of the reason I was placed in care right away because they said, you already have 2 kids already in the system for neglect, and this kid needs around the clock care because, you have to hear a baby crying to know is it a diaper change, is it a feeding, is it a whatever. And they basically just sent her home with sign language. Said this is the only way you're going to communicate with this kid. So I wasn't expected to have this. I still have partially paralyzed vocal cords. They were completely paralyzed at birth. And my grandmother, my biological mother's mother, takes full credit for it because she prayed every day, Jehovah, please give my granddaughter a voice. So when this happened, she's like, this is proof, you know.
Wow.
So so that's why I went straight to a foster home. But the foster home turned out to be neglectful. So I went back to the hospital. And then from the hospital, they released me to my mother, which she said they should have done in the first place. But that didn't last very long. I ended up being with my grandmother and then two other placements before the final one. And I vaguely remember the one right before the final placement. They were an older couple, and I believe they retired. And that's why I ended up moving to my final placement.
I have to admit that the child care system, the system of foster care, et cetera, is not something I know the most about, but it seems like it was extraordinary. I don't mean in a great way for there to be so many years that elapsed before your adoption took place. Is that something that's fairly common for a number of years to go by?
I don't think it is. I don't think it's very common at all. What I do know about that is that the initial plan was reunification.
Right.
I was supposed to just be there temporarily, and I had weekend visits in the beginning with my mother and older brother, older sister. So my sister's 3 years older than me, my brother's 5 years older than me. We had weekend visits that I looked forward to, that I couldn't wait for. And then that switched over to supervised visits on the weekend, a couple of hours in a small concrete room with little plastic chairs. It was more comfortable to sit on the floor. I remember that. And that was because my adoptive mom would call the social worker relentlessly and say, she's bringing her back late. She's not, the t-shirt that I packed is not there. It was just complaint after complaint after complaint until it got switched over to supervised visits. Now, I feel like as soon as they decided they wanted to adopt, all of my biological mother's efforts to prove that she was fit to parent were sabotaged.
Uh,
Yeah. And I also remember the social worker coming to the house, having meetings with my parents to kind of wrap this thing up. Um, and them missing meetings and missing phone calls, kind of dodging them. And I believe at the time the foster care stipend for a medically fragile child, because I had a tracheotomy, I believe it was something like 1,800 a month, which was considered a lot of money at that time. And it wasn't until the social worker said, you know, if you switch over to a disability check, it'll be much more. And they said, okay, let's get it going. Let's get this thing going. So that's when the adoption got finalized because of money.
how does that feel thinking about that, if I may ask?
It feels horrible because to me, if I'm the social worker and these people will say they wanted to adopt and it's taking this long to get the adoption finalized, and I figure out this is the carrot that I need to put out there, I think I wouldn't have pursued it. I think I wouldn't have pursued it. Like clearly you're in this just for a paycheck, or
Right.
what you're looking at as a paycheck. I would have been like, nope.
Yeah, it'd be
So
very
that's
hard.
kind of upsetting that
Yeah.
social worker wanted to finalize as many adoptions as possible. So this is a way to get it done.
Oh man, that is so heartbreaking to hear. And we talk a lot about the commodification of children, and what an example of that, right? If
Hmm.
this is how much money you'll get in this
Yeah,
instance, and it's just I don't know how to see it any other way than
yeah.
somebody wanting to make money off of you. And I'm sorry that that was the experience. And I know you've said, and as I read little bits of reviews from the memoir, that there was abuse that happened, and I certainly wouldn't ask you to share anything you feel uncomfortable with, but it sounds like, for the number of years that you were there and just wishing eventually that you had aged out so you had been eligible for things that might really have helped you with the course that you wanted your life to take.
Yeah.
Um, are there any details of growing up that you'd like to share about?
Sure, sure. So my last placement was with an older couple, and I really do feel like they looked better on paper than my single college student mother. And I think that's why they kind of pushed in that direction because they had a good reputation in the community. You know, he was a Baptist minister, she was a stay-at-home mom. And as far as I know, everyone kind of looked up to them and admired them. And, they were doing the Lord's work, taking care of these children that nobody wanted. So I think that's a part of the reason that that looked better on paper than my single mother. Um, but what they didn't know is that both of them were, I don't know if I can say this word, I guess so, pedophiles. There it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, they look at foster care as just something to appease their disgusting desires. Have 6 kids in the house. It was a good time for them, and torturous for us. So, but I think, I was so groomed. I was so groomed that I felt like nobody wanted me. And these people actually do, even if I have to put up with whatever, but at least they want me and they want to keep me. So I just had to suck it up and deal. Um, kind of literally. But yeah, it's like looking back on it, like no kid should have to, that's a high price to pay to feel like you have a family, to feel like somebody actually wants you. And that's the upsetting part as an adult to find out actually, no, my mother wanted me. She fought very hard. My grandmother wanted me. She fought very hard. Um, there were cousins that wanted to take me in. Even the nurse in the NICU wanted me. So it's like it's baffling to me.
So many places it seems like you could have gone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't
And
even know if my birth father knew about me at all.
oh,
I have no idea. So yeah, that's it's a high price to pay to feel like you have a family, and I should be grateful that someone wants me regardless of what I had to go through to keep that placement.
it's
I
painful to
remember,
hear. Yeah.
yeah, I remember being 12. I remember that having to go to court to finalize the adoption, and I met with the judge in the judge's chamber, and I was told I had 3 choices because my opinion counted at 12. Do you want to be adopted? Do you want to go back with your birth mother? Or do you want to go to a different foster home? The thought of going to a different foster home terrified me because I had heard so many horror stories about children being starved and beaten and murdered, and I think those stories were told to me for a reason. So I would be afraid. Um, and my birth mother, I hadn't seen her in so many years, she felt like a stranger.
Yeah.
So from that fearful place, I said, I want to be adopted because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
It's yeah, it's really you mentioned about the high price, for a child to feel wanted and like they'll be somewhere that's a family or a place of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the ultimate price to have your safety, your dignity, and knowing as your consciousness continues to evolve, that you're aware that you were wanted and what could have been the life for you. And I can imagine how that must have felt growing up, and
Yeah.
then be standing in front of the judge and thinking, okay, I'm confronted with this. I have to pick what it becomes about preservation, doesn't it? Self-preservation, just
Yeah.
having to survive.
Yeah. And I think what's really upsetting is I wish I would have heard, or do you want to stay where you are and age out and have your college paid for? Like, why wasn't that, why wasn't
Yeah,
that presented?
yeah.
You
You've
know, at
got so
12
many
years
years
old, you're not
already.
thinking
Yeah.
about college. You're not thinking about what resources are out there available to me. You know, that wasn't even an option. So, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, it points up that we we're about the promotion of care. We want children to have care, even people who don't necessarily agree with adoption. Nobody's ever said that we didn't want children to have proper care, but it's the system and the process and what it does, and that it's a for-profit industry that takes people's identities away that makes it
Hmm.
so problematic, I think. But
Yeah.
on the foster care side of this, as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about it, it sounds like you had a lot of contact with biological relatives at different points in your life, even before you
Yes,
were really adopted, right? Because you had
that's right.
visits and yeah, so you were very aware of who people were, right? And you were seeing them at least somewhat regularly.
Yeah, like I said, I had weekend visits up to a certain
Yeah.
point, and then I had the supervised visits up to a certain point, and then that went away. And once the adoption was finalized, it was supposed to be no further contact. It was supposed to
Oh,
be a closed
yeah.
adoption, which right now seems ridiculous to me.
Mhm.
But um, my grandmother, and I think this is what really instilled resilience in me, she refused to go away. She refused. I mean, she would call relentlessly. I want to see my granddaughter. I want to see my granddaughter. I mean, back to back phone calls.
Yeah.
And I remember my adopted mother screaming into the phone, "She's not your granddaughter. Stop calling here." And she would say, "I don't care what your piece of paper says. Jehovah knows that's my granddaughter." And she would call over and over and over. And finally, my adopted mother would give in. Okay, you can see her this Saturday for a couple of hours. And she would take me to the mall and we would do a little shopping because her doing that let me know I was worth fighting for. And there was no one else doing that. No one else doing that in my life. So I always look back on that and really valued that and really found like, wow, like she's call the police, do whatever you're going to do, but I'm going to keep calling until your phone breaks, basically. Whereas
Wow, that's amazing.
I
Yeah.
think my birth mother was so defeated that she's like, well, what can I do? Because my older brother and sister were in a different placement. And that's another issue. Why were we separated?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know for sure. I don't know if it was timing because they were already in care when I was born. So I always want to know, why wasn't I placed in the same home with them? And
Mm.
I'll never know, but I always want to know, is it because their foster mother didn't do infants, or maybe she didn't do medically fragile infants? I don't know, but I was never placed with them. Um, but she had a different relationship with their foster mother than she had with mine. And the funny thing about it is their foster mother and my foster mother knew each other because their foster father was also a Baptist minister. So ministers know other ministers. And they would talk on the phone, about how my mother was a whore and she doesn't deserve these kids. And yeah, they would talk on the phone.
Wow.
So my adopted mother, foster mother, heard how their mother had an open door policy. She was like her kids. She can come see them whenever she wants. But then that turned into a physical altercation with the police being called, with kidnapping charges. And yeah, my adopted mother was very clear. Do not come to my house. Do not call my house. I will call the police if I see you on site, period. So I I was not allowed to maintain a connection with her, whereas they were. And yeah, so it's like the only real contact that continued was with my grandmother because she just was not going to go away. Whereas my birth mother was, like I said, defeated. It's funny to me when I read the chart and it says the requirements for reunification were maintain housing, maintain employment, and go. And I think there was a therapy component. But I'm like, that's weird. When we were taken, she had those things, but she had to come home to an empty house, empty apartment, and like, where are my kids? Where are my kids? And find a little card in the door from CPS worker was mentally distressing on her. Like she basically had a breakdown, lost her job, barely finished college, lost her housing. And honestly, I don't think she's recovered 100% to this day. So it's interesting to me. People don't really talk about the emotional trauma that is placed on the bio family, specifically the mother, with the way that CPS removes children, just the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I very much value hearing this from you, and it's tough to hear, of course, because it's gut wrenching, it's sad, but it's so raw, right? These are the things that are happening in the system again that maybe I, as somebody who was a lifelong adoptee, am not as aware of, but I need to hear more about this. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate you sharing what you have here and the amount of information you have. And you mentioned the file and the things you've seen in there. Are those records that are readily available to you, or did you have to petition to get records? I know for me as an adoptee, I had to write to the state of California to get papers. Obviously, I don't have my original birth certificate, but I
Yeah.
eventually got some adoption paperwork. What was that information easier for you to get?
It was a little easy for me to get. I just had to send an email to someone who, because it's foster care records, which is I think is very different from adoption records.
It must be, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so my adoption records are sealed, right?
Yep.
Which I've never seen that, and I've never seen my original birth certificate, but my foster care file is available, and they gave me the option. You can come in and sit with the file for a couple of hours. You can tell me exactly what you're looking for, and we can make Xerox copies. So at that time, I think I must have been like, I don't know, 30 something, let's just say. And at the time, it was just mind boggling to me because I felt like all the adults that were around me, I'm like, what were they saying? I just really I said I wanted all reports from teachers, all child psychologists, because I had been in therapy my entire life.
Yeah.
And out of all of those, so I asked for copies of those, school reports as well as reports from the various child therapists that I had seen. And out of all of those reports, the therapists were saying things like, these poor foster parents need more support. They're dealing with the very reactive behavioral problems. That's what they were saying. And
Wow. Yeah.
there was only one that said this kid has gone from being a advanced, smart, funny, bubbly person to shut down, withdrawn, um, and this is not a good placement. Only one
Oh,
said this is not a good placement. Child should be moved. But out of all the others that were like, they never said this was a good or bad placement. They just said these poor parents, they need so much more support. Which is why I said, if I was an adult around me as a child, I would have been up in arms, like something is really wrong here.
yeah.
But the message that I got was, foster kids, they're just defective. There's just something wrong with them. You just have to deal with it. You just have to put up with it. They come, this is how they come, basically. You try to get the most money out of it that you can. And yeah. which is what makes the foster parents so saintly, because good Lord, who would sign up for this, you know?
So
Yeah.
it's again, I keep thinking of how heartbreaking it is that the trauma that you were constantly enduring and that it shaped your life and continued to, it was not what they saw. They just saw reaction, which of course people react when they go through circumstances like that
Yeah.
and treatment like that. And instead it was directed to the foster parents.
Yeah.
And it was just completely misplaced. And so I wish they had listened to the person who was commenting that the placement wasn't a good placement.
Yeah. I actually reached out to this person, but I think he was like 90 years old, and
Oh, yeah.
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 I really wanted to be like, you're the only one who saw anything. And I think when I called, I think it was his like living nurse who was like, "Oh, he's asleep," and I was like, "Okay." So yeah, I don't know what happened after that, but yeah. And as far as social workers go, I don't think I saw the same social worker more than twice. And the social worker is supposed to be the one that builds a bond and a connection, so the kid feels safe to say, "This is what's happening in the home. This is what I'm going through." But if you only see the person twice, and the people you did trust with what's going on did nothing about it, you're never going to build that connection.
Right.
People are like, why didn't you tell anyone? Well, the people I did tell could care less. And the people that I probably should have told, I didn't know well enough to trust that they would do anything about it. So
Seems
I
like a
just,
regular door, right? They're just coming and going.
yeah, yeah. And when they did come, it was to talk to the adults that needed all the support. None of them ever talked to me. How are you doing? Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you happy here? None of them ever talked to me. I remember just kind of being in my bedroom door, kind of peeking in while they were talking. I was supposed to stay in my room and sit down and be quiet.
Yeah, they could have said anything they wanted to at that point, right? You wouldn't have any voice, any say in what was happening to you.
Right,
Uh,
right. I didn't even know I was supposed to.
yeah, do you know if that's kind of symptomatic these days still for people in the
As far
system?
as I know, the system has made some improvements since my time in care. I was born in 75, so this is like late 70s, early 80s.
Hmm.
Social workers are supposed to see the child at least once a month and check on the kid, right? And this is what drives me a little bit bananas, is that the level of care is going to vary depending on what state, what city, what county, what worker is assigned to your case. So, of course, if social workers are having 80 cases, 60 cases, corners are going to get cut, and so many reports of falsified records. It's like, wait, according to your records, you saw the kid every month. You didn't notice that they were anorexic? Like, you didn't notice like every single rib was showing? Like, clearly it's not true. But the problem is the system is set up that a lot of social workers have jobs that they really can't humanly do. And now the standard is to hire case managers to try kind of do some of the brunt work that will take a lower pay. So there has been some improvements as far as, people really attempting to see the kid and check on the kid, but it's not always the case, depending on where you are.
I've been thinking since you talked about the fact that your adoption records are sealed and your birth
Mhm,
certificate is sealed,
mhm.
and you'd lived all these years, and suddenly you're an adopted person. Does it feel like part of your life just was suddenly shut and you started becoming somebody else at that point, or they told you were somebody different at a very old age? Like, Like a
No,
before and after to your life. I wonder what that was like.
yeah, no, actually it just felt like nothing really changed.
Okay.
My last name changed, that's about it. But honestly, it felt just like a continuation of the same.
Okay.
Because these were my foster parents from age 3. So getting to 12 and just having my last name changed, it really was climatic because it was like just
Okay.
more, it was just more of the same. It was no celebration, like, oh, we're your forever family now. Like how we see on online sometimes. It was nothing like that. Um, there was conversation about changing my first name as well, but I was old enough to push back against that. My so I had two adopted brothers, and my adopted father's name was Willie James. So the youngest, his name was changed to Willie, and the older one, his name was changed to James, and they wanted to change my name to Willette.
Oh,
And I was like, "Are you on drugs?" No, absolutely not. I was old enough to be like, "No, that's no, thank you.
yeah.
Hard pass." But the last name, it made sense to change because, I'm adopted now, so okay. I wasn't too attached to my birth last name because, like I said, be that huge disconnect with my birth mom and my birth family. It's like, well, all right, whatever.
So at some point here, as I read more about your bio, said people basically have been asking you about writing, right? Or talking to you about your story, but what do you think held you back from wanting or believing you could write your story for so long?
Good question. Thanks.
Sure.
So my whole life, like I said, being molested by my adopted father and his two brothers, and attempting to tell my adopted mother, and I think she's the only one I attempted to tell. And nothing happened, nothing changed. And the few times I did cry about that, as well as missing my birth mother, I was told nobody cares. Stop crying. Nobody cares. And I think that message just really was just so deeply that nobody cares. I'm like, people go through much worse. And for the most part, I'm okay. Like I got to go to college and do all the normal things that people do. So yeah, I just believe like, I'm insignificant, not important. Nobody cares about this because I was literally told that over and over and over. It's like, what's wrong with you? Oh, I just miss my mom. I thought we were going to have a visit. Like, what? Why are you worried about her? I'm the one taking care of you. Nobody cares. Stop crying about that. She's living her life. You should do the same. Over and over and over, no matter what it was. What's wrong with you? The answer was always fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Like you talk about masking, like masking. It better always be happy. Otherwise, you're going to get a 5-hour lecture about how I am the one slaving and doing everything for you and you don't appreciate. So, as an adult, starting therapy, remember, I'd been in therapy my whole life, seeing these child therapists that I didn't trust and would just sit there and just stare at the clock the whole time. As an adult, I said, you know what? I need to start taking this seriously and get some healing under my belt. And when I first started therapy as an adult, it was to deal with sexual abuse. And it never dawned on me that the whole adoption process and foster care may have had an effect. I just thought, once I get past the sexual abuse stuff, I'll be right as rain. So the therapist said, you should tell your story. And I was like, nobody cares about that, you know. And just hearing that finally over and over, you should tell your story. You should tell your story. And I'm like, what for? Who cares? Nobody cares. Um, but the thing that finally clicked for me was hearing my therapist say, um, if you tell your story, it'll be healing for you. and it we healing for someone who hears it. And I thought, hmm, okay, maybe it will be healing for me. And maybe one other person might read it and maybe it'll be healing for them too. And you know how they say, if you can change the life of one person, you've done something. So I thought, you know what? Maybe. But I kind of thought about it. I didn't go past that. Just like, But then even later with a completely different therapist, she said, as long as you are keeping the secret, you are protecting your abuser. And they are not worthy of your protection. You needed their protection and they didn't protect you. And now you're protecting them. And I thought about that because for them, image was everything. More important than anything, how they appeared in the community, keeping up with the Joneses. And I thought, you know what? They don't deserve my protection. So that's when I really kind of started thinking about it. And I ended up going to these adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse meetings. And it was in that meeting that I kind of told a part of my story for the first time. And I was like, wow, that was cool. That was a little bit freeing. But then later on, I thought, well, these people, they're there for the same reason. It's a kind of a captive audience. Outside of this space, nobody cares. So then after that, I joined a queer healing arts collective where we were putting together a play and everybody had a little part in the play. And I said, you know what? I'm doing this just for my healing. That's it. I didn't expect anything out of it. So we performed the play literally one weekend. And at the end of the play, people would, they had a table set up for the performers where people could ask questions. And I was in the dressing room packing my stuff because, nobody cares about my part. And they're like, Marika, get out here. And I was like, what? There were actually people there that wanted to ask me questions and said, wow, that was powerful. That was amazing. I really resonated with it. And I was like, what? I was like blown away. But then later that night, I thought, well, that was just a fluke, Friday night, people are bored. Yeah. And then it happened again on Saturday. And then it happened again on Sunday. And I was like, holy crap. That was the first time the nobody cares kind of got challenged. I
Yeah, it
was
was
like,
pretty deeply ingrained in you, wasn't it? To the point where you
yes.
just couldn't even imagine
Yeah.
it being otherwise, right?
No, no. I was like, wow, this is amazing. But the group kind of fell apart. And then I was like, well, how am I going to get my story out there? People might care. So I started a weekly blog, which requires consistency and which I was not. I would be kind of consistent for a couple of weeks and then it would be nothing for months. And then all of a sudden there's 20 blog posts. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. I said, you know what? I need to write a book and I just need to get the whole story out there once and for all. I just need to get the whole story out there. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to, and it was very hard to do, but two writing coaches, two editors, developmental editor, and later it's finally done. It's finally done. I just kept telling myself, because the goal is to live to 125. So if I get to 125 and I'm on my deathbed and this isn't done, I will never rest in peace. I will never rest in peace. And I was like, I have to get this thing done. And there were times where I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a ghostwriter because I'm just not getting it done. And I talked to a good friend of mine and she's like, it really needs to be your story with your words. You'll feel so much better about it. I was like, ah, damn it. She's right. It's like, okay. And my last developmental editor, I told him, I said, you know what? I have a tendency to start writing and then hit a hard part, get triggered, and step away from it and take a break. And he's like, you're saying you want to have this thing finished before your 50th birthday? You will have to write through them tears. And I was like, damn it, he's right. So there I was, plugging away, just letting the tears flow. Like, why? I've had therapy about this. This is supposed to be easy. I know my story. Why is this affecting me? I thought I was healed. And that's when I learned healing is not a destination. You don't go through 5 years of therapy and then boom, poof, I'm done. I'm healed. Moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the title is A Flower Called Orphan Girl. What can you tell us about the title?
Well, the title came because I've always felt like an orphan. Actually, I used to feel like an alien.
Oh,
I
yeah.
used I used to watch the show called Mork and Mindy.
Yep.
And I used
We're
to
all
think
smiling.
I used to think
Real.
maybe I came out of an egg like Mork. Because I the connection with my birth mother was gone and the connection with my adopted mother was strained at best. I was like, maybe I'm an alien. But I don't know. I've always felt like an orphan. Like I don't really have any family. I'm just here, you know? And then seeing how flowers just bust through concrete, they just give them just this much room to grow. They can be soft, they can be fragile, but they figure out a way to get through and survive and thrive. And I felt like that.
It's
I
great.
was like, and all, everyone kind of had an idea of what my life was going to be. Teachers, counselors, therapists, people at church, you know, I don't know. I just heard the advice over and over. Don't get pregnant and don't get on drugs. Try to get you a job. What? I wasn't into none of that. Like, clearly they didn't know anything about me, but as a former foster youth, now adopted, that's what was expected. And I was just kind of like, you don't know anything about me. And I felt like I spent my whole life proving people wrong about who I was. So I just really resonated with this flower just busting through all the obstacles, which I felt like was my life.
Yeah, that's fairly powerful. And I saw the image of it, and it's all bright and colorful and fills up the whole front of the book. What are the book came out in April, so we're hopeful that people are picking it up and enjoying it. Again, I saw some great reviews of it.
Yeah, so
How
far.
is how's the reception been, and what are your hopes for the book and who it might be able to speak to?
Yeah, the reception has been good. It has been really good, and I'm very happy about that. Um, I tell everybody this is for everybody that is involved in the system. Kind of like I tell foster parents and adopted parents, read this. This is what not to do. And I
Yeah.
tell adoptees and former foster youth, I hope this inspires you to tell your story. This is something I hadn't thought about, but I was saying that I wrote the book for three reasons now. It kind of evolved into these three reasons. Inspiration, inspire other folks to tell their story, regardless of where they are in the constellation. Education, because I have gotten so sick of talking to people that say, "Oh, I had no idea. Oh, I had no idea." So clueless. Just last weekend, I was at a book festival, and I had a table, and I'm talking to people, and I said, "What do you know about foster care and adoption?" Oh, just whatever they show on TV and movies. And
Yep.
I'm like, this affects everyone. And a lot of people think, well, because I wasn't adopted and I wasn't in foster care, it has nothing to do with me. But it does. So education and then hopefully prevent future harm. That's kind of the goals that I have. And my wife told me maybe last month, she's like, "Oh, so you've created an IEP for the system." I was like, yeah, I had
Oh,
thought of it that
wow.
way. But yes, yes. So I hope that with this book, people read it, folks get inspired, folks get some education to know how to vote on certain laws with the adoptive children and foster youth in mind, not just something they saw in movies that, like, oh yeah, that seems like a good idea, but they have no clue about it. And I hope to prevent future harm. That I'll never know for sure, but hope so.
Tell us about the live streaming you do. I know you're
Oh yeah, yeah.
pretty active. You're always on, right?
I am always on. Yeah, I started live streaming on TikTok Actually, my first live streams were of me exercising, Get Fit at 50. And then I started live streaming while I was still writing the book, looking for like accountability partners who want to write with me. And that was very difficult because it's a silent situation. And I'm like, is anybody on? Okay, keep going. Nobody, zero. Okay, keep writing. But then after a while, I did kind of get a couple of people that would come in and write with me, and that was cool. And then once the first draft was done, I feel like the people that have joined my life have been with me through this whole anxiety-ridden process of like, finishing it and then going back and forth with editors and then with the publisher and formatting. And so when is it coming? When is it coming? I don't know. But now it's definitely evolved into really educating and advocating for people to know about the system and want to be an active participant in making it better. So I live stream daily, 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every day except for Sunday. Sundays is 4:30 p.m. only once. And I've put together a whole not agenda, but a weekly schedule, say. So Sundays we have Storytime Sunday where a different person that comes to the live streams regularly, my wildflowers, who I love, will tell a part of their story and be available for Q&A. So that's Sunday. And then Monday we have Money in Politics Monday, where we talk about the fact that child welfare is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And why isn't this money being used for family preservation and reunification? The same money that is being given to complete strangers could be used to actually help a family stay together. But there's no profit in that. So no one values that. So we talk about that on Monday. And Tuesday is Talk It Out Tuesday. And this evolved because on TikTok and other spaces where there's adoptee community, I kind of started hearing over and over, adoptees are toxic. Adoptees are cult-like. Adoptees are, hurt people hurt people. And my thing is, how can we come together as a collective force to demand the system change if there's so much infighting? Everybody's got a different way they want to approach it. We don't have to fight about it though. We don't have to.
Right. Right.
So I said, everyone's talking about how horrible it is and click like and all this type of stuff, but I don't see anybody creating a space of healing where people can really just talk it out and say, you know what, we used to be close. We used to align on so many different things, and I would like us to get back to that safely with a mediator. So that's kind of why I created this space. And so far, and I have a two-phase conversation that I walk people through to get them back to that. And sometimes it'll take more than one conversation. Sometimes it's depending on what the misunderstanding was. But yeah, it does kind of bother me that people are more invested in the drama and, oh, honey, what did she say? Oh, what did she say? Oh, and I'm like, no, no, no. If you're here because you really want to heal this connection, let's talk. But if you are just looking to shame someone, make them bad and wrong, look what they did to me. This is not the space. You're not ready. Come back on another Tuesday or something like that. And then Wednesday is centering the voices of, so we've had a Wednesday centering the voices of adoptees, centering the voices of former foster youth, centering the voices of foster parents, centering the voices of social workers, centering, and just recently, thanks to going to um, the conference, Untangling Our Roots, we've had one centering the voices of donor conceived. Because after the conference, since going to the conference, I was like, wow, this
Yeah.
is. And then we'll have centering the voices of NPE. I found out at the conference I'm also an NPE. I'm like, what?
Oh, wow. We found that too. Wow.
Yeah, so that's Wednesday, and then Thursday we have Think Tank Thursday, ways to grow the team. How do we break out of our echo chamber and reach people that have an open mind and an open heart and actually want to learn? I'm not talking about people that oppose. I'm talking about someone who is neutral and just doesn't know have the information. And then Friday is Fun Friday, where we just play games and listen to music, and because we talk about pretty heavy stuff all week. We need a break on Friday. We have fun. And then Saturday is what's on your mind, what's on your heart, just kind of open forum. Um, so yeah, that's how I run the live streams every day of the week.
That is incredible. And it sounds like
Thank
you
you.
are caring for people at all the different levels of being human.
Yes, because it's my strong belief that the system is the way it is because everybody is lied to at one point or another. Everybody is purposefully infected with Hallmark syndrome. You know, you you did all the right things. You went to college, you got married, you got your dream career, you found your dream spouse. The only thing missing is this bundle of joy. Here's one for you. We found one for you, and now your life will be complete. No mention of maternal separation trauma, no mention of what happens if you don't feel this bond. All sales final. You're stuck in it too. And if it's not right, there's something wrong with you. Everyone else is happy. And I feel like these lies are told to everybody. Adoptive parents, birth parents, foster parents. Oh yeah, it'll be fine. Just get a t-shirt and some jeans and the kid is good to go. And
Yeah.
social workers. I've talked to social workers who are like, when I was in school, I really thought I'm going to be helping families and making a difference. And now that I'm here, all my efforts to do that, I'm getting smacked on the wrist. No, we don't do it like that. No, we don't do it like that. Within the first 2 years, most social workers either quit or conform, which means cutting corners and trying to figure out ways to just keep the job. And everybody is being lied to because somebody up here is making money. And it's not going to stop until we
Well,
all come together to do something about it, to change it. It can't be, I'm an adoptee and I hate all social workers. I'm a foster youth and I hate all foster parents. We're never going to get there. We're never going to get there.
so you're like a consummate bridge builder. It seems like you're a conciliator, I would say, of you can see that the message is big enough that it needs the unified voice of people to set aside things that have been squabbles or that
Yeah.
are creating heat, friction, rather than unifying into something stronger that can help get the message out.
Yeah. And this is what I say on a daily basis. I have to care about the individual journey until we can come together for the collective journey.
Mhm.
It, it's the only way, I believe. If there's another way, I'm open to hearing it. I'm all ears. But as
Sounds like
far
a
as I can
fantastic
see,
way. Yeah.
as far as I can see, that's the only way.
Yeah, it sounds like it's similar, I think, to the objectives of a lot of thoughtful organizations like NAAP, who strives to do this very thing, I think,
Mm,
aka Adoption Network Cleveland, et cetera, and probably
yes.
many. I'm not trying to be selective. I'm just naming ones that come
Yeah.
to the top of my mind here. But
Yeah.
hopefully, the people piloting these are committed to a greater objective, a higher objective that requires, um, yes, a collective voice and a willingness to work together on something that really could be
Yeah.
transformative.
And I'm like 100% interested in finding out what organization is working on what, because I'm not about just reinventing the wheel. Because to me, for me to come into this and think I know the way would be very arrogant and disrespectful to the people who have already laid the groundwork for years before I was even around. So I'm very much interested in collaboration, partnership, um, because each org is focused on something different. Somebody's focused on baby boxes, somebody's focused on birth certificates, somebody else is focused on making sure children age out with support. Somebody else might be focused on, you know, prioritizing bio families and making kinship and fictive kinship a priority. So I feel like everybody has their focus and their role, but we still can come together and support each other's work. I don't think it needs to be one org doing everything.
Yeah, I agree. And it's much richer with the collective voices and timbers of people that have
Hmm.
their own thing to say. And it can be symphonic, right? It can be all collectively beautiful to hear and listen to,
I
and
think so.
stronger.
I
Yeah.
think so. I would love it if, you know, I don't know who's doing the work, but I'm going to try to find out. I think there's a real issue with how people are vetted in becoming foster parents as well as adoptive parents. There's something wrong with the system that
Yeah.
so much of the wrong people are being pulled into it.
Yeah.
I feel like the people that fostered me last and adopted me last never should have been around children, period. Never should have been around children. And it's so funny when I talk to religious people that say, I was called to foster because, it's a calling from God, right? I wasn't allowed to have my own baby because I was supposed to do this. This is a calling from God. And when I think about the person that I was adopted by, the fact that she had so many failed pregnancies, like 9 miscarriages, 2 stillborns, that's a lot. I don't think that's a calling. I think that's a no. I see that as a no. Like no,
That's
you're
an
not
important
supposed to
point.
parent, and even people that were pregnant that lived in their house failed. It didn't, every infant around them didn't survive. To me, that's a loud and clear message. So yeah, I feel like people need to be vetted properly. There needs to be a whole overhaul of how people even are allowed to interact with children that are vulnerable. I tell people all the time, if my story was just one out of millions, like, oh wow, that's horrible. That never happens. That's never heard of. That's so unusual. I'd be like, well, damn, it sucks to be me. But the fact that I talked to so many other adoptees, so many other former foster youth, and there's some common thread in all of it, similar types of abuse, similar, tells me it's a systemic problem. It's not just these one random people that slipped through the cracks and I was harmed. No.
Such an important point. So I hear that same thing. People say, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, right? That's the thing people hear.
Yeah.
'Cause
It
they
wasn't
want
just
to
me.
think you're an isolated incident somehow.
Right.
And no, we're trying to say that there's something going on here,
Hmm.
and we're not believed, unfortunately. But wow, I feel like uh, we just scratched the surface of, there's so many interesting things that we could go ahead with other parts of the conversation. I know the night's wearing on. We probably should call it off for now, but I would love to have you
Okay.
come back because there are so many. It's very fruitful to hear you speak about these things, and it brings up more and more. And I think I'd really like to talk about that. I really
I
like to
would
talk
love
about
to.
that. That
Hmm.
would be wonderful. So
Okay.
I want to thank you. Can you tell people briefly how to get in touch with you? Or, it's funny you
Sure.
say where to find you because you just kind of talked about where to find you, but what would
Yeah.
they actually go look up in order to find you?
You would look up Orphan Girl 75 on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the social media basically.
That's awesome.
And that is where you will find me.
Wow, what a great conversation. I can't
Thank
thank you
you.
enough. Really appreciate you being here, Marika, and providing, I knew it was going to be interesting and very stimulating thoughts. So appreciate also everybody who came out here to support you and
Yes,
listen and
thank you.
comment in the chat. We'll switch in a minute here to hopefully a little robust Q&A and give people a
Okay.
chance to get back to you. But thanks again for everybody for coming out to support Marika.
Yes.
And at this point, we'll end the recorded session and everybody stay on and we'll go into Q&A. Hope to see everybody back on NAAP for our other offerings very soon. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.